We live in an age of voluntary surveillance. Every achievement photographed, every intention broadcasted, every strategy announced before execution. The culture worships visibility like a god, demanding constant proof of existence through perpetual performance. We are told to share everything, celebrate openly, announce our victories in real time. The modern doctrine insists that if you're not visible, you don't exist. If you're not performing, you're not progressing. If you're not broadcasting your success, you haven't truly succeeded. But here's what nobody tells you. The moment you display your strength, you begin losing it. The instant you reveal your strategy, you gift your opponents the blueprint for your defeat. This is not philosophy. This is physics. For every action made visible, there exists an equal and opposite reaction, perfectly calibrated to neutralize you. Every time you show off your wins, someone somewhere is taking notes, calculating how to replicate your success or prevent you from repeating it. Every time you announce your plans, competitors are adjusting their strategies to counter yours. Every time you reveal your position, you're painting a target on your back. Niccolo Machiavelli understood something that modern society has forgotten. Power and exposure are inversely proportional. The more visible you become, the less powerful you remain. Not because visibility itself is weak, but because it transforms you from player to target, from strategist to spectacle, from hunter to hunt. In Renaissance Italy, men died not from lack of strength, but from excessive pride. They announced their moves and found knives waiting. They displayed their wealth and attracted thieves. They revealed their plans and awakened enemies who had been sleeping. The streets of Florence were paved with the bodies of men who could unresist the urge to be admired. Machiavelli lived through this. He watched princes fall because they needed to be seen as powerful rather than actually being powerful. He observed rulers who confused the appearance of strength with its substance. They wore ornate crowns and spoke loudly in public forums, but behind closed doors, they were being outmaneuvered by quieter, more calculating minds. The peacock may dazzle with its display, but it's also the first to be hunted. The bright plumage that attracts admiration also attracts predators. Today's epidemic is worse. We don't just display accidentally, we display compulsively. It's not enough to achieve something. We must document it. It's not enough to be successful. We must be seen being successful. We photograph our meals, broadcast our workouts, share our reading lists, announce our business ideas, update our relationship status. We treat our lives like products requiring constant marketing. Every moment becomes content. Every achievement becomes performance. Every private victory must be made public, or it somehow doesn't count. Social media has weaponized this impulse. The platforms are designed to reward display and punish privacy. The algorithm favors those who share constantly, who perform relentlessly, who turn their entire existence into digestible content. And so we've created a generation that measures self-worth in likes, validates identity through comments, and defines success by visibility. But what Machiavelli would tell you, what he tried to warn princes about 5 centuries ago, is this. Every piece of information you volunteer is ammunition you hand to people who may one day use it against you. The wise man hoards his secrets like a miser hoards, not out of paranoia, but out of strategy. He understands that information is currency, and in giving it away freely, you're making yourself poor. Every detail you reveal about your plans gives others the ability to interfere. Every emotion you broadcast gives manipulators a map to your vulnerabilities. Every success you celebrate openly invites envy, and envy is the mother of sabotage. The person who knows everything about you controls you more effectively than any chain ever could. Think about what you've shared in the last week. Your goals, your frustrations, your victories, your plans. Now imagine someone who opposes your interests reading all of it. What have you given them? You've shown them where you're headed, so they can block the path. You've revealed what matters to you, so they can threaten it. You've displayed your methods, so they can copy or counter them. You've announced your timeline, so they can act faster. In your quest for validation, you've armed your opposition. And the worst part, most of this exposure serves no strategic purpose. It doesn't advance your position. It doesn't strengthen your capabilities. It doesn't protect your interests. It simply feels good. It satisfies the human need to be seen, to be acknowledged, to matter to someone other than yourself. But that feeling is a trap. It's a drug that weakens you while convincing you you're strong. Every hit of validation makes you more dependent on external approval and less capable of independent action. The architecture of invisibility. There's a reason apex predators don't announce their presence. The lion doesn't roar before the hunt, it roars after. The roar isn't about the hunt, it's about establishing territory once the kill is secured. The shark doesn't splash and thrash before attacking. It glides beneath the surface, invisible until the moment of contact. The wolf doesn't howl when stalking prey, only when calling the pack or marking domain. Nature has already solved this equation through millions of years of evolution. Survival favors the concealed. The loud ones die young. The showy ones become meals. The quiet ones endure. But humans, addicted to validation and drunk on the illusion that visibility equals importance, have unlearned this ancient wisdom. We confuse announcement with achievement. As if declaring something makes it real, we mistake broadcasting for building. As if sharing progress is the same as making progress. We believe that if we don't perform our success publicly, loudly, repeatedly, then somehow it doesn't count. We need witnesses to validate our victories. We need audiences to confirm our worth. We've become so dependent on external validation that we've forgotten how to validate ourselves. Machiavelli wrote that everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. This is one of the most profound observations in all of political philosophy. Read it again slowly. Everyone judges the surface. Almost nobody knows the substance. The world sees your performance and assumes that's your reality. But performance is costume, not character. It's mask, not face. It's theater, not truth. And here's the strategic implication. If everyone is judging based on appearance anyway, why would you give them accurate information? Why would you hand them the map to your interior? The smart operator creates deliberate distance between appearance and reality. He shows one thing while being another. Not out of dishonesty, but out of intelligence. He understands that the person who fully reveals themselves becomes fully controllable. If people know your strengths, they avoid confronting you there. If they know your weaknesses, they attack you there. If they know your patterns, they predict your moves. If they know your desires, they manipulate you with them. But if they can't read you, if you remain opaque, mysterious, unpredictable, then they're forced to hesitate. And hesitation is where you find your advantage. Think about negotiations. The person who speaks first reveals their position before learning their opponents. They've shown their cards while the other player still holds theirs. The person who names their price first sets a ceiling on their own negotiation. The person who reveals their budget gets charged exactly that amount. The person who confesses their deadline gets pressured right up until that moment. In every strategic exchange, information asymmetry determines the winner. And you create that asymmetry not by gathering more intelligence, but by revealing less. This applies to everything. The job seeker who broadcasts their desperation eliminates their negotiating power. The entrepreneur who announces their idea before building it invites theft. The professional who shares their process gives away their competitive advantage. The person in conflict who reveals their anger shows their opponent exactly which buttons to push. Every piece of information you volunteer shifts power from you to whoever receives it. Consider the entrepreneur who announces their startup idea at parties, seeking validation, craving encouragement, wanting people to tell them it's brilliant. What happens? 18 months, someone with better resources, better connections, or just faster execution has launched the same concept. The original person sits there confused, feeling robbed, not realizing they robbed themselves. They gave away the idea for free in exchange for momentary approval from people who had no stake in their success. Or the professional who constantly broadcasts their job search, their salary expectations, their dissatisfaction with current employment, their interview schedule. They think they're networking. They think they're creating opportunities. What they're actually doing is signaling desperation, eliminating negotiating leverage, and making themselves appear on. Companies see someone who keep quiet about internal dissatisfaction and think, this person will do the same thing here. They see someone who publicizes their salary expectations and think, this person has no negotiating skill. They've turned their job search into a liability. Or the person in a relationship who posts every intimate detail, every conflict, every reconciliation, every private moment. They've turned their private life into public property. Now strangers have opinions about decisions that should be theirs alone. Now every fight is witnessed by an audience that remembers things the couple has forgiven. Now the relationship isn't just between two people. It's a performance for hundreds or thousands. And that pressure, that constant surveillance, that need to maintain the public narrative, often destroys what it was meant to celebrate. This is what showing off actually does. It transfers power from you to your audience. The moment you seek their approval, you've made them your judges. The moment you need their validation, you've made them your masters. The moment you require their witness to feel successful, you've given them control over your emotional state. And Machiavelli would tell you that a prince who needs to be loved by the people will inevitably be controlled by the people. But a prince who operates independently of their opinion, that's sovereignty. That's freedom. That's power. The psychology of strategic opacity. Why do people fear the quiet ones? Not because silence suggests weakness. Silence suggests depth. When someone speaks constantly, revealing every thought, broadcasting every plan, explaining every decision, you map them as others. You learn their patterns within days. You know their triggers, their fears, their desires, their limits. They become predictable, and predictable means manageable. You know how they'll react to pressure. You know what they'll do when threatened. You know what they want and can use that knowledge as leverage. But the person who withholds, the person who speaks rarely and reveals little, they could be anything. They could be planning anything. Their silence contains infinite possibility. Are they weak or just patient? Are they uncertain or strategically waiting? Are they unaware or deliberately playing dumb? You don't know. And that uncertainty creates a psychological weight that chatter never achieves. The unknown is always heavier than the known. Mystery carries more power than transparency ever will. Machiavelli observed that leaders who over-explain their decisions appear defensive. When you feel compelled to justify every choice, to explain every action, to defend every decision, you're communicating insecurity. You're saying, I need your approval. I need you to understand. I need you to think I'm smart. And all of that is weakness. Leaders who justify their actions appear uncertain. If you were confident in your decision, you wouldn't need others to validate it. The explanation itself is admission of doubt. But leaders who act decisively and explain nothing, they appear absolute. They communicate. I've considered everything necessary, made my decision, and I'm not interested in your opinion about it. This isn't cruelty. This is perception management, because the world respects what it cannot fully understand. The moment you become completely legible, completely transparent, completely explainable, you become completely dismissible. People think they've figured you out. They think they know what you'll do next. And once they think that, they stop treating you carefully. Mystery is not an aesthetic choice. Mystery is a strategic necessity. It's not about being enigmatic for its own sake. It's about maintaining operational security. It's about preserving freedom of movement. It's about keeping your opponents guessing. Every question about you that remains unanswered is space where you can maneuver. Every aspect of yourself you don't explain is territory they can't map. Every plan you don't announce is a move they can't counter. Here's the brutal truth that Machiavelli understood. Your plans are not safe with people. Even well-meaning people, even friends, even family. They will tell someone who will tell someone else. Your ambitions will become gossip. Your strategies will become entertainment. Your vulnerabilities will become jokes. And eventually, someone who sees you as competition will use your own words as the foundation for your obstruction. This is not cynicism. This is pattern recognition. How many times have you shared an idea only to watch someone else execute it? How many times have you confessed a weakness only to have it weaponized later? How many times have you announced a plan only to face mysterious obstacles that seem to anticipate your moves? The pattern repeats because most people never learn the lesson. Your mouth is a security breach. Every word you speak is a potential leak. Every confidence you share is a vulnerability you create. And once information leaves your control, it never returns. But there's a deeper psychological mechanism at work, one that makes display even more damaging. When you announce your intentions, You receive premature satisfaction. Your brain registers the social approval, the encouraging comments, the supportive reactions as accomplishment. You get the dopamine hit before doing any actual work. Studies confirm this. People who talk about their goals are statistically less likely to achieve them. Why? Because they've already received the reward, the validation, the feeling of success, without earning it through execution. Think about it. You decide you're going to start a business. You tell everyone. They say it's amazing. They say you're brave. They say they can't wait to see it. And you feel great. You feel like you've already done something, but you haven't. You've just talked. The talking feels like progress, but it's not. It's simulation. It's rehearsal. It's performance. And while you're busy collecting applause for your announcement, someone quieter is busy actually building their business. This is why the disciplined mind speaks only when speech multiplies power, never when it merely satisfies ego. If your words don't serve a strategic purpose, if they don't advance your position, if they don't create leverage or protect interests, then they're serving someone else's purpose. They're feeding the attention economy. They're satisfying your need for validation. But they're not making you stronger. They're making you weaker. The discipline of withholding Machiavelli understood that true power requires emotional independence. You cannot be powerful if you need to be liked. You cannot be strategic if you require constant affirmation. You cannot be effective if your decisions are shaped by the desire for approval. The prince who makes choices based on popularity will inevitably make the wrong choices. But the prince who makes choices based on outcomes, based on results, based on strategic necessity, regardless of whether those choices are popular, that's leadership. And leadership is lonely by design. This is where most people break. This is the test that separates the disciplined from the desperate. They cannot tolerate being misunderstood. They cannot accept being underestimated. They cannot handle the thought that someone, somewhere, has the wrong impression of them. They need to be seen accurately, to be appreciated correctly. To be understood fully becomes overwhelming. And so they explain. They clarify. They justify. They perform. They correct every misconception. They defend against every criticism. They need everyone to know who they really are. And in that performance, they surrender the advantage, because the person who needs you to understand them has already lost control of the narrative. They've accepted your authority to judge them. They've made your opinion matter. They've given you power over their emotional state. But the truly powerful don't recognize that authority. They don't care if you misunderstand. They don't care if you underestimate. They don't care if you get it wrong. They simply proceed. They simply execute. They simply win, and they let the results speak instead of their mouths. Watch the powerful closely, and you'll notice they rarely defend themselves. Accusations fly, and they remain silent. Criticism accumulates, and they continue working. Misunderstandings spread, and they don't correct them. Why? Because defense is admission of vulnerability. The moment you feel compelled to explain yourself, to justify your actions, to correct someone's wrong impression, you've accepted their right to judge you. You've acknowledged that their opinion matters enough to warrant your time and energy. You've elevated their perspective to the level where it can affect yours. But the truly powerful don't recognize that authority. They understand that not every criticism deserves a response, that not every question deserves an answer, that not every misunderstanding deserves correction. They're comfortable being misunderstood because they're secure in their own self-knowledge. They don't need external validation because they have internal certainty. They don't need you to see them correctly because they see themselves clearly. And that independence, that self-sufficiency, that emotional autonomy is the foundation of all strategic action. This doesn't mean never speaking. It means speaking strategically. It means understanding that your words are expensive, that every sentence carries cost, that communication is not free. When you do speak, let it be rare enough that people remember. Let it be clear enough that it requires no follow-up. Let it carry the weight of everything you chose not to say. That's what gives words power. Scarcity. The person who talks constantly becomes background noise. Their words lose value through inflation. But the person who speaks once and moves mountains, that's unforgettable. That's influential. That's powerful. The discipline of withholding extends beyond speech to demonstration. Don't show your full capacity. Don't reveal your complete skill set. Don't display your entire arsenal. Always keep something in reserve. Always maintain capabilities others don't know about. Because the moment people know your limits, they know how to contain you. They know your maximum reach and can stay just beyond it. They know your full capabilities and can prepare counters for each one. They've mapped your entire territory and can navigate around your strengths. But if they suspect you have resources they haven't seen, if they think you have capabilities they can't measure, if they believe you have connections they don't know about, you've created uncertainty. And uncertainty creates space. Space to maneuver. Space to surprise. Space to dominate. The fighter who shows every technique and training gives opponents time to develop defenses. The fighter who holds back, who reveals new skills only in the actual fight, maintains the advantage of surprise. Machiavelli's most misunderstood advice was, it is better to be feared than loved. People focus on the fear part and miss the deeper insight. The real observation is the comparison between fear and love, and what each requires. Love requires you to be known, understood, relatable, vulnerable. People love what they understand. They love what they can relate to. They love what makes them comfortable. But fear requires only that you be unpredictable, capable, and willing. Fear doesn't need understanding. Fear doesn't need comfort. Fear needs only the sense that crossing you would be costly. Love makes you vulnerable to disappointment. If people love you, they have expectations. They have standards you must meet. They have an image of you that you must maintain. And if you fail to live up to that image, love converts to resentment faster than anything else. The loved leader who makes one unpopular decision faces betrayal. But fear makes you immune to familiarity. The feared leader can be unpredictable without losing authority, can be harsh without losing effectiveness, can operate without needing anyone to understand or approve. And familiarity, not hatred, is the real enemy of respect. People don't fear what they fully understand. They don't respect what they can completely predict. They don't treat carefully what they've mapped entirely, but what they can predict, what they don't fully understand, what remains mysterious and potentially dangerous, that commands cautious respect. That creates careful distance. That maintains operational space. The final architecture, here's what separates amateurs from masters. Amateurs seek recognition for their efforts. Masters seek only outcomes. The amateur needs people to see him working, to witness his grind, to acknowledge his sacrifice, to validate his hustle. He posts pictures of his workspace at midnight. He shares screenshots of his schedule. He broadcasts how hard he's working because the work itself isn't enough. He needs the work to be seen. He needs the struggle to be witnessed. He needs other people to know he's trying. The master works in obscurity and allows results to be his only announcement. He doesn't need anyone to see him working because the outcome will speak louder than any progress update ever could. He doesn't need to document the process because the finished product is what matters. He doesn't need witnesses to his effort because he's not working for their approval. He's working for the result. And when that result arrives, it speaks with a voice that silences all the previous noise. When the amateur achieves something, he broadcasts it immediately, desperately, repeatedly. He needs that validation right now. He needs the likes, the congratulations, the acknowledgement. He announces every small victory, every incremental progress, every minor achievement, and in doing so, he trains people to expect announcements. He conditions his audience to wait for updates. He makes his success dependent on their reaction. His achievement isn't real until it's recognized. His victory doesn't count until it's celebrated publicly. The master, when he achieves something, is already 3 moves ahead, working on the next thing, while others are still reacting to the last. By the time people notice what he's accomplished, he's moved on. He doesn't need to celebrate because celebration is consumption of time and energy that could be invested in the next project. He doesn't need recognition because recognition doesn't advance his position. He doesn't need applause because applause doesn't compound into future success. He just keeps building, quietly, relentlessly, without needing anyone to watch. This is the Machiavellian framework distilled. Operate below the surface until surfacing is strategically advantageous. Build power in darkness. Accumulate leverage in silence. Develop capabilities in private, and only emerge into visibility when your position is so fortified, your power so consolidated, your capabilities so overwhelming that exposure cannot harm you. The person who shows off before reaching this point is gambling with resources they cannot afford to lose. They're revealing their hand before the pot is won. They're celebrating before crossing the finish line. Think about billionaires who live modestly. Warren Buffett still lives in a house he bought in 1958. Mark Zuckerberg wears the same gray t-shirt every day. These aren't eccentric choices. These are strategic decisions. They've understood that displaying wealth doesn't increase wealth. It only attracts attention. And attention for the wealthy means requests, lawsuits, kidnappers, manipulators. They've learned that the most effective way to preserve power is to not advertise that you have it. Think about elite athletes who train privately. They don't broadcast their workouts. They don't reveal their training methods. They don't share their nutritional protocols. Why? Because their competitors are watching. Every technique they reveal is a technique their opponents can prepare for. Every method they share is a method that becomes less effective when everyone uses it. So they train in silence. They develop in privacy, and they only reveal their improvements on competition day, when it's too late for others to catch up. Think about strategists who never appear in media. The most powerful political operators aren't the ones you see on television. They're the ones whispering in the ears of the people on television. The most influential business leaders aren't the ones doing interviews. They're the ones making calls that change industries while journalists interview their frontmen. The most effective military minds aren't the ones with medals displayed. They're the ones planning operations that never appear in the news because they worked so perfectly that nobody knows they happened. They've all understood something crucial. The spotlight is not a throne. It's a target marker. Every minute you spend being visible is a minute you're not spending being effective. Every ounce of energy you invest in performance is energy not available for production. Every bit of attention you receive is attention that could become scrutiny, criticism, opposition, interference. The spectacle costs. And that cost is often your actual progress. So when you feel the urge to post your plans, to announce your moves, to prove your worth, stop. Pause. Ask yourself, who benefits from this information? If the answer isn't clearly you, if there's no strategic advantage to revealing it, if it serves no purpose except satisfying your ego or seeking validation, then silence is your answer. When you want to show off your success, your acquisition, your achievement, pause. Ask yourself, what vulnerability does this create? What target does this paint? What attention does this attract? If you can't articulate a strategic benefit that outweighs these risks, default to discretion. The world will pressure you to be visible. Society will tell you that if you're not broadcasting, you're not relevant. The algorithm will punish privacy and reward performance. The culture will insist that success must be shared or it doesn't count. But Machiavelli would tell you the same thing he told princes 500 years ago. The crowd is not your advisor. Popularity is not your metric. The mob's opinion is not your compass. Your only obligation is to outcomes. And outcomes do not require an audience. They do not need validation. They do not need approval. They simply need to be achieved. The lethal silence, you've made it this far, which means something in you recognizes the cost of your exposure. You've felt the backlash of sharing too much. You've watched people use your transparency against you. You've experienced the hollowness of validation that comes from display rather than accomplishment. You've noticed that the more you announce, the less you achieve. That the more you perform, the less you progress. That the more you seek approval, the less power you retain. And now you're standing at a decision point. One path continues. As before, performing, explaining, seeking approval, needing recognition, broadcasting every move, justifying every decision, sharing every thought. That path is comfortable because it's familiar. You know how to walk it. You've been walking it for years. It's what everyone else is doing. It's what the culture encourages. It's what the platforms reward. But it's also the path where your power leaks, where your strategies become common knowledge, where your effectiveness diminishes with every word you speak. It's the path where you remain dependent on external validation, where your self-worth is outsourced to strangers, where your success is measured in metrics that don't compound into real-world power. The other path is colder, quieter, lonelier. You stop announcing. You stop justifying. You stop performing. You build in darkness and let your results be the only evidence of your existence. You withdraw from the attention economy. You opt out of the validation marketplace. You refuse to perform for audiences that have no stake in your success. People will misunderstand you. They will underestimate you. They will forget about you entirely. And that's precisely when you become most dangerous. Because while they're not paying attention, you're building. While they're distracted by the next performer, you're strengthening your position. While they're watching other people's spectacles, you're accumulating real power. And when you finally emerge, when your results become undeniable, when your position becomes unassailable, they'll wonder where you came from. They'll ask how you did it. They'll want you to explain your success, and you won't. Because you've learned that explanation is just another form of display. That teaching others your methods just creates more competition. Let the wise keep their strategies private. This path requires discipline that most people don't have. It requires emotional independence that most people haven't developed. It requires comfort with being misunderstood that most people can't tolerate. It requires focus that refuses to be distracted by the need for approval. It requires patience that can build for years without needing recognition. It requires strength that doesn't need external validation to continue. Most people can't walk this path. They need the applause too much. They need to be seen too desperately. They need validation too frequently. But if you can walk it, if you can develop that discipline, if you can build that independence, you become something different from the masses. You become someone who operates by different rules. Someone who plays a different game. Someone who accumulates power while others accumulate followers. Someone who builds empires while others build personal brands. Someone who achieves outcomes while others achieve visibility. So I'm asking you directly, are you ready to be invisible until it has time to be impossible to ignore? Are you ready to trade the comfort of recognition for the power of mystery? Are you ready to understand that silence is not absence, but presence concentrated? Not weakness, but strength conserved. Not emptiness, but potential unlimited. Are you ready to stop needing applause? Are you ready to stop requiring validation? Are you ready to stop performing for people who have no real stake in your success? This is not motivational speaking. This is not inspirational content. This is operational strategy for a world where most people are so busy broadcasting that they never actually build anything. Where most people are so addicted to display that they never develop real capabilities. Where most people are so dependent on external validation that they never discover their own power. And in that world, the person who moves in silence doesn't just have an advantage. They have an overwhelming advantage. They're playing a different game entirely. If this has rewired something in you, if you recognize that you've been bleeding power through the wound of display, if you understand that every announcement is a leak, that every explanation is a vulnerability, that every performance is a cost, then write in the comments, I move in silence. Let's identify who's ready to stop performing and start dominating. Who's ready to understand that the most lethal force is the one nobody sees coming. Who's ready to trade the false comfort of recognition for the real power of mystery. Watch the next video. It builds on this foundation. It goes deeper into the mechanisms of power, the psychology of dominance, the architecture of influence. And if you've understood this lesson, if you've internalized these principles, what comes next will make you unstoppable. Not because you'll be louder, but because you'll be invisible. And invisibility, in a world obsessed with visibility, is the ultimate weapon.